Hello, I'm Paul Howard. I'm a member of the Inglewood chapter, California affiliate.
This is Christopher Crawley of the National Federation of the Blind of South Carolina, state board member.
And you're listening to
White Canes Connect.
Hey there, PA Federationists. Welcome to another episode of White Canes Connect, presented by the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. My name is David Goldstein. I am the treasurer of the Keystone Chapter. Joining me today is co-host and Keystone Chapter's second vice president, Lisa Bryant. Lisa, how are you today?
Well, David, great conversation with Paul Howard and Kris Crawley. Paul has been a member of the Federation going back to 1975, and Kris has been a member since 2013. Both are members of the Black Leaders Division, and it's a very interesting contrast. Paul, of course, has seen a lot of things over the years, and Kris offered new, the emerging perspective and what he sees as the goals of the division.
Yeah, they really had two different takes on it, and the amount of things that Paul has seen over the years is just incredible, and hopefully he's laid the groundwork for folks like Kris and others that come after both of them to really move the organization forward.
Yeah, so let's take a listen to Paul Howard and Kris Crawley.
Paul and Kris, thanks so much for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having us.
We thought it would be good in celebration of Black History Month to have two representatives from the Black Leaders Division, which actually has another name that maybe one of you can speak to, and get sort of a historical perspective as well as the up and coming perspective of how this division will even play out in the years to come. So Paul Howard, you have been a long-time member of the Federation. When did you first come to the Federation, and in what city and state?
I joined the Federation back in 75 as a student while attending Ball State University. I was brought into the organization by Dr. Mark Maurer. At the time, he was organizing a student division on our campus.
Wow.
From there, I decided to, after graduating, form a chapter in my hometown of Gary, Indiana. So I had some assistance with our state leadership in forming that chapter, and it is still in existence 42 years later. And I served as chapter president there for the first 5 years of its organizing.
Wow, I don't even think I realized from your talk a few weeks ago how far back you went. Kris, how about you? When did you first come to the Federation?
I first joined the Federation in April of 2013 when I was attending a vocational rehabilitation center in Richmond, Virginia. And I was brought to the Federation by my mobility instructor, orientation and mobility instructor at the time, Jennifer Kennedy, who currently serves as the executive director of one of our national centers, Blind Inc. in Minnesota.
Paul, we'd love for you to give us some of the history. You did a wonderful presentation a few weeks ago to the Black Leaders Division, but you can share a little bit about what those early days were like. For instance, do you know about how many Black members there were of the Federation when you joined back in 75?
I'm going to approximate maybe between 400 and 700. Okay. I know my first national convention was in 1981, which was held in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I realized that myself and maybe 4 other Black Gary chapter members were in attendance from our Indiana affiliate. So it was only 4 of us out of 14. And going through the exhibit hall and walking through the ballroom, I noticed most of the Blacks that were in attendance at this convention in 81 were from Southern affiliates, Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, South Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama, and Mississippi, and even a few in Georgia. And I was just surprised of how many there were as compared to we from the Midwest, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio. Many of those Blacks were from Detroit, Cleveland, Indianapolis, Gary, a few from Chicago. And I just think that as the affiliate began to progress, while I was a member in the 80s attending various national conventions, state conventions in Indiana specifically, more and more Blacks had come on board. And I saw that when I attended the state convention in Louisville, Kentucky, about 5 years later. And there were more Blacks in attendance, specifically from the Midwest at that time. So over the years, it has grown in popularity and population.
Yeah.
And I believe due to the various organizings of national centers where the opportunity has been available to get additional training and training specifically by blind people, the membership has grown and more opportunities have become available from state rehab agencies to send Blacks to Colorado, Louisiana, and Minnesota. I've had an opportunity to visit Colorado Center and the Blind Inc. Center in Minneapolis, but I never have had an opportunity to visit the Louisiana Center at this present time. But visiting those centers, I would say there were a handful of Blacks getting training. And I know for certain that it has benefited those who were receiving that training. I was able to advocate for a young fella who had graduated in 1996 from Indiana State University. I met with him and his VR counselor in Indiana back in Gary, and she was able to send him to the Colorado Center, and he got his necessary training and made Denver his home.
Kris, you actually have some experience with Blind Inc., correct?
I actually toured Blind Inc. about, almost 2 years ago now. I was invited up there by Jennifer Kennedy, previously mentioned, because she has been a mentor of mine for years. I never attended the center, but I was invited to tour.
So in your years since being in the Federation, have you noticed a growth in the population of Blacks in the Federation?
Well, I would say that for me, when I first joined the Federation in 2013, we were represented fairly well on the local level. It wasn't really reflected in leadership, however.
Okay.
When I was participating in the Florida affiliate, I was in West Palm Beach, Florida, so we had a very diverse population and membership base there. Here in South Carolina, we are percentage-wise, we may be the majority. I don't really know, but I know that more than half of our state board is filled with Black members.
Does it surprise either one of you that it has been so long in coming? Because the division only became officially a division, 2 years now?
Our National Organization of Blind Black Leaders, I believe, was originally organized in 20. I think that summer we were virtual, and Shawn Callaway, the DC affiliate president, had decided to try to organize Black leaders. As I was coming up through the Federation back in the 80s and 90s, the former president of the DC affiliate, Don Galloway, had that same idea, but it wasn't readily acceptable at the time by the national president, Dr. Jernigan, in the mid 80s, and later on in the early 90s, Dr. Maurer. So
why do you think there was resistance?
I just don't believe that Dr. Jernigan, who was originally from Tennessee, who moved on to Iowa, wasn't prepared, or maybe was a little bit nervous about Blacks gaining power, not so much of being in leadership positions, but maybe organizing to gain power and overtaking the organization and running it the way many other civil rights movements were being conducted at that time. I think he was just very apprehensive and not knowing how the other races may have accepted Blacks being in the position of power in the organization.
Kris, did it surprise you that there was not an official division when you first joined?
Well,
especially seeing so many other, members, seeing that the population existed.
Right. Let me first say that it started off as a committee, and then we officially became a division in July of last year at the national convention. Did it surprise me that there was no division when I first joined? Not really, because when I first joined, I didn't have a lot of knowledge of the NFB to begin with. All I knew about the NFB, what people told me honestly, was NFB stood for Not for Blacks. So it took me a little while to kind of get around that and actually understand it.
Now, I'm sorry. Did you know that before you joined, or you found that out after you joined?
No, I knew that before I joined.
And you joined anyway.
And I joined anyway because I was surrounded by blind professionals who understood Federation philosophy and could explain to me what the organization was about. And I further better understood that when I joined the Richmond chapter, and I was surrounded by mostly Black people. So it could not be for Blacks. You know what I mean? But I wasn't surprised that there was not a division, because the NFB at the time and to this day does not have any other division specific to race or ethnicity, depending on your perspective.
We probably need to back up just a little bit, and I'll throw this out to whichever one of you think you can best articulate the mission. We did have Shawn on, but let's again refresh people's memory, or maybe bring to first time here. What is the mission, the purpose, the goal of the Black Leaders Division? And it goes by the acronym NOBBL. So break down what NOBBL is and what exactly is the mission. And I guess maybe I'll throw it to you first, Paul.
Well, it's National Organization of Black Blind Leaders. Over the years, as indicated, some affiliates had Black presidents, chapter level, state level. As the organization has grown over the years, more and more Blacks have become members, more have participated at the state and national level. Being that many of us became leaders, I think because of the leadership and Blacks being in professional roles in the workplace, it has evolved to provide a direction, a positive direction for new persons who are becoming blind Black members in the organization. It could be positive and influential, especially for our blind Black youth who have the opportunity to be a part of this organization, to get training at our national centers, and to see we who are in the workplace, who are professionals and who are successful. It's a dynamic organization that is going to lend that positivity for those individuals. When I was a member, when I first became a member back in the 80s, it wasn't that. So I was basically influenced by those few state presidents who I had an opportunity to meet and gain knowledge from. And I saw how successful that they were. And I wanted to be as successful as them at the leadership level and in the workplace as well. I went into education in the early 90s after I had earned a business degree, and I had exercised that business degree, and I got out of retail and finally went into education, listening to my mother eventually, but knowing that I could be a leader to young Black youth who were blind and visually impaired in our public school system back in Gary, Indiana. Some joined the Federation and others did not.
How would you articulate the division's mission?
For me, the most important thing, and I think this is, it can be really a part answer to a question that you asked earlier. A lot of people, when they hear that, we wanted to become a division, they thought that we were just trying to separate the Black members from the white members. But the mission of the National Organization of Blind Black Leaders, first and foremost, is to serve as the division of the National Federation of the Blind to promote the equality, opportunity, and security of the blind. Mm-hmm. But we do want to address and help people become aware and understand the intersecting issues facing blind Black members of the Federation as well. Part of that is, we exist to help those leaders who want to pursue leadership roles within the Federation to obtain those skills through workshops. We have many different working groups within the division. Also help people become more, or not even more engaged, but re-engage with the movement. Down here in South Carolina, we became the first chapter of the national division back in November. And one of the things, we immediately became one of the largest divisions member-wise in the state, because many people, even though we had a large Black membership base, many people felt like they didn't have a voice, they were not being heard, and just us being here, being willing to hear them and bringing them in and encouraging them was enough for them to get re-engaged in the mission of the Federation. So it's a lot that goes into that, and I think we're doing a lot of great things and we're moving in the right direction.
So that's interesting. Now, is South Carolina the only state that is a state division?
Right, correct. We're the only
one. Okay. So what does that actually mean in terms of what you're doing, I guess, on your, more local level as opposed to nationally? What sort of supplemental activities, programming, fundraising are you doing?
Right. So we just became a division officially back in November, and started.
Okay.
So we're still fairly new.
Right.
But one of the things we did is kind of what I spoke to is re-engaging members. We're seeing people attending our meetings that you don't see in any other meeting within the Federation. Because when you can identify with the people that are leading these meetings and participating in these presentations, it makes a big difference. We're holding many, I guess you could call them leadership seminars in a way, different workshops to kind of build those leadership skills, those skills that you're going to need to be a professional, enter the workforce, be more confident. This is a thing where, as a leader, you don't sit in these positions and hold a position for 25 years. Your goal is to prepare leaders of tomorrow. And that's what I think we're moving towards now.
In South Carolina, I assume it's similar to the other states where, because it's a division, somebody could come in there instead of joining a chapter. If they want to get into the NFB, they could just come to that division, pay their dues, and you're good to go. Is that right?
Not in South Carolina. In South Carolina, you have to be in good standing with the affiliate first before joining the division.
I'm glad you made that point about being able to pass on the baton, because I agree with you. You have to keep turning that soil, because otherwise your organization, your mission, you look dated, and it's not very welcoming to the new generation. So I'm very glad to hear you make that point. Paul, you shared when you did a presentation to the division a few weeks ago, you shared what were some unfortunate sort of dark periods. Tell us a little bit about when resistance was, I guess, at its peak, and how let's definitely bring it on to a more positive note. How has that now flipped? What are you most encouraged by? So two-part, what were some of the darker moments, and what are you most hopeful? What are you seeing that gives you great hope?
I didn't mention back then at my presentation, but Gary is predominantly Black. It was then, it still is now. And many of our members were a part of the rehab system at the time. And my rehab counselor decided to come to one of our chapter meetings. And he was the state president of the American Council for the Blind of Indiana. But he wanted to come to one of our chapter meetings, and our meetings are open, so he came. But he came at a time when we were discussing upcoming elections, and he wanted to run for a position. And I told him that he was not going to be able to do that. And he got, of course, offended. And he wanted to challenge me and the other members, who all were his clients. And I got confirmation from our state leadership that at that time in Indiana, if you were a board member of the American Council, this gentleman was the president of the American Council, and he wanted to run for an office
within the NFB.
It was decided that dual membership was forbidden. So he could not be an office holder. He could be a member, but not an office holder. And when I brought that to his attention, and I didn't do it in front of the chapter, I pulled him out into the hallway and explained to him what our state policy was. And he got offended, and he was upset. And I was pretty much blackballed from receiving any VR services for about 3 to 5 years because he was my counselor.
Was that as much about racial discrimination, or was it more about the I hate to say rivalry, but I guess the
I
friction or whatever the word is between the two organizations.
I'm go-
I go ahead.
I'm gonna say it was part of both because
Okay.
the majority of our members were his clients, and we were all Black. And me being the chapter president, I took the brunt of I guess him being upset with our state policy. So I I indicated, to him that you could be a member. Our meetings are open, but you cannot serve on our board in any capacity. And he took offense to it, and I had to deal with the consequences. But I dealt with it, and I stood by what we were standing for at that time. Um, in the mid '80s, doing my research, I found what was really mind blowing. As I stated earlier, Southern affiliates had a greater Black population and membership in the organization than many of the Midwestern states. And I guess state presidents feared the overtaking by Black members. One entire chapter was expelled in 1986 by the president of the Louisiana affiliate, and I believe it was the Baton Rouge chapter. And it was feared that their members had so much influence and power over other members in general that they were going to try to become in charge of the state affiliate. And this was prior to the opening and organizing of the Louisiana Center. And all of the members were expelled, the entire chapter, which,
I guess that was a predominantly Black chapter.
yes, it was. And they had to reorganize and get themselves together. And what made it so bad, they all still attended the national convention and worked the exhibit hall for the state affiliate. They had already been expelled from the affiliate.
How were they expelled but allowed to work?
They went on to the national convention. They attended the national convention as individuals, and they decided to work on behalf of the affiliate.
What was the reason given for that expulsion? What was they had to come up with some sort of a
I'm assuming that they were afraid of the overtaking and the power and the influence that they had on other members in general, Black and white. And they were looked upon as upcoming members in the organization, in that affiliate. And as it turned out, many state presidents were being harassed, I would say. Dr. Mauer came to the Indiana State Convention and did not allow us to have one. He called it a reorganizing because he received a phone call from a member saying that myself and my board were doing some inappropriate things, which we were not. And as it turned out, he reconstructed our Constitution. He made all of us step down. He called it a reorganizing. Everybody had an opportunity to be reelected, and we all were. So that was how that turned out.
Did he remember you from back in Boston? Did he remember the interactions with you from back then?
Dr. Mauer?
Yeah. Because I'm assuming he was when he...
Yeah, he and I went way back to 1975. And we always had a good relationship. We had a good rapport. I was invited to a leadership seminar in 1984. And he and I sat in the same room for 4 days, 12 hours a day, and we discussed Federation philosophy. And as I became state president, he was at our state convention in 1990 due to some shenanigans that had been carried out by the previous state president. And he and I sat down and he said, Paul, you're going to have to take over this affiliate. And I told him, Dr. Maurer, at this time, I'm not mentally ready to do so because it was a bad situation that our affiliate was in. I mean, money was missing. The president was investing our fundraising monies into a personal fund, investment fund. And as first vice president, I didn't even know, nor did any of the board, let alone the affiliate members. And it just so happened that it came out because Dr. Maurer wanted a audit done at our state convention. Later on in the 90s, the state president of the Arkansas affiliate and Tennessee affiliate were both approached by Dr. Maurer, who claimed that he received phone calls from disgruntled members wanting to have them removed from office. And it started with me in 94, and it progressed through 95, 96, and 97. And I maintained my state leadership position for another 2.5 years, as well as the state presidents in Arkansas and Tennessee, who were both Black, and they had been state presidents longer than I had been. And they had a very good reputation at the national level as well as at the state level, but individuals wanted to create controversy. They were upset that Blacks were in power. And I did not perceive my state presidency as having power. I was very diplomatic in my position. I moved my state board meetings around to different chapter areas of the state. I invited various individuals to speak at the state board meetings, at our state conventions. I was very open with the Indiana affiliate, but I still caught hell. And it was unfortunate. And many other state presidents did as well.
So, Kris, I'm not sure if you were on the call where Paul, shared quite a few stories of, these challenges over the years. How does hearing some of the history drive you to be involved now as a member, as a leader within the division?
I'm in the state of South Carolina. In the state of South Carolina, I am the only Muslim from an African-American background. Mm-hmm. So I understand discrimination. I understand discrimination not only with just the average member, but also within leadership. But you participate and you put yourself out there and you work on building relationships so the people who come after you don't have to deal with the same discrimination. Mm-hmm. Because we're all in here for the same reason. We're pushing this movement forward because we believe in the capabilities of blind people. Right. And all we want is to be treated equal and given the same opportunities as our sighted counterparts.
Right.
So I participate so people who come after me, they don't have to deal with the discrimination on the same level that I have and that others have.
Very well said. Paul, what are you most hopeful about? Because I know that you've seen things change since 1975. So what are you encouraged by?
Our young, upcoming youth, this organizing of the National Organization of Black Blind Leaders, the advancing of Black leaders being selected to serve at the national level, state presidents, chapter presidents, many Black blind persons who are in the professional ranks demonstrating to the upcoming Black blind youth there is hope, there is optimism, and working hard brings about success. And I, like Kris, and probably you, we've had to work hard, not only in this organization, but throughout life in general. We all are confronted with obstacles on a daily basis. Being in this organization has certainly given me the confidence to go out in the real world on a daily basis to confront the obstacles that we must deal with on a daily basis. And I know that the youth in this organization, they have a very good outlook and a very good future ahead of them. With the current president, Mark Riccobono, who I've known since 2004, he has certainly moved this organization forward in a very progressive way, in a very open way. And it's only for the good for everybody.
You had mentioned the Indiana affiliate, and you're now in California. What differences have you seen since getting to California? Has there been a big difference? About the same? How's it been?
It's a great difference. I have found the membership here in California to be very laid back, subdued. There's only 3 Blacks on the state board. There are probably 5 Black chapter presidents, and there's 25 different chapters here in the state. The individuals are pretty much to themselves or pretty much to their chapters. We don't have any state fundraising projects until we go to national convention. When I was in Indiana, there was state fundraising projects off and on throughout the year. Here in California, there hasn't been, and I've been here for 10 years almost now. Chapters have their own fundraising projects. With the state being so large and chapters so spread out, it's very seldom that you get 2 chapters, coming together, just socializing or putting together a project. Whereas back in Indiana, which is considerably smaller, fewer chapters, I found it to be a greater camaraderie amongst the affiliate membership. Here in California, that isn't so. And it's unfortunate, but from what I've been told, it's always been this way.
I wanted each of you to talk about what's needed. How can people support the division? Paul, what do you think the division really needs from anyone who, Black or whatever, wants to just support the advancement of this division? Where is the biggest need? Do you need people as mentors? Do you need donations? What is the greatest need that you see? And then Kris, I'll let you answer the same question.
I think involvement, giving the organization an opportunity, becoming a member, donating, specifically time, monetarily would be great as well. If they become a member, they have an opportunity to learn from state leaders. They have an opportunity to be mentored so that they can have a greater understanding about the organization and help us move the organization forward. That's what I think is needed.
Kris?
Down here in South Carolina with our local division, we've actually, although I spoke earlier about the discrimination and everything, it was very encouraging is that we've gotten a lot of support in the creation of the division. And we have Black members, yes. We also have white members who are coming and showing up and participating, showing their support for what we're trying to do as a division. But what's needed for the division to grow and to succeed, I think, is knowing what you're getting into, especially when it comes to the National Federation of the Blind. It's not enough to pay your $5 or your $10 and you're a member and you just sit there for the whole year and do nothing. We want active participation. We want you to come on these calls and gain something from it, but we also want to benefit from you and your experiences. So active participation, I think, is the most important thing.
And what is the way to get involved with the division nationally? I know you said earlier that to be involved with the state division, you do need to have active membership within the affiliate, but I guess, Paul, maybe do you want to start with contact information for the national level?
Yes, individuals can become a part of this division by contacting Shawn Callaway at diversity@nfb.org or Denise Avant, who is his co-chair of the national organization, at the same email address, diversity@nfb.org. And if they were to go and email either Denise or Shawn, they will be able to be provided additional information, because within the National Organization of Black Blind Leaders, there are various interest groups that might be found to be interesting to those persons that might want to be a member of the organization or even a member of the interest group to find out more information about the National Federation of the Blind.
And some of those interest groups are like Black seniors or mentors, like just what are a few of those?
There's a seniors interest group. There's a Black women's interest group. There is a Black youth interest group, a communications interest group, and many others.
Great.
And we also have a mentorship and outreach working group that's headed by Suzanne Turner. Young adults interest group, young men. There's a couple others, Black elected leaders and Black professionals working groups as well.
Kris, before we let you go, you talked a lot about South Carolina, and you told us before we were recording that you're going to be moving to Arizona. Are you hoping to get something going out there? What are your plans once you get to Arizona?
Oh, before I even touch down in Arizona, I'm going to join the Arizona affiliate. That's not even a question. I'm looking forward to it. I think the most interesting part in the whole thing is traveling through the airport with my 3 kids and pregnant wife. So,
oh my goodness.
My condolences.
Wow.
Good luck, Kris.
It's not traveling through the airport that's the trouble. It's when you're sealed up on the airplane with the 3 kids.
For 5 hours, yes.
Oh my golly. And Kris, is there any contact information that you'd like to share?
Yeah, you can contact me directly if you like at Kicrawley, that's CRAWLEY .nfb@gmail.com as well. And I think for the national division as well, just for your information, I believe dues are still $1 to encourage people to want to come join, see what we're all about and participate as well too. So we'd love to have anyone who's willing to participate in further the mission of the Federation. Black, white, doesn't matter. We'd love to have you.
Well, it's been a pleasure talking to both of you. Thank you so much for coming on. I'm glad we could get this in time for Black History Month, although I think it's a relative topic to kind of revisit every now and again as the division grows. So thank you both so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for inviting us.
Thank you for inviting me, Lisa.
Thanks again to Paul and Kris for stopping by and giving us some more insight on the National Organization of Blind Black Leaders. And they've seen so much, and there's so much work still to do for them.
Yes, but the key point that I got from both Paul and Kris is that they're dedicated to the Federation as a whole, which is what they also wanted people to realize, that yes, there is a space for the Black leaders, but the mission is to support the Federation as a whole. And I love that they both kind of honed in on that. And I think it's also remarkable that there is a state chapter of the division, which Kris currently is heading up.
That's true. Yeah. And that is great there in South Carolina. I hope it stays together and they can keep the lights on as you want. Once he heads to Arizona. Good luck with him on his move. And one thing that they mentioned, and it's so important, the entry, because it's a new division, it's $1. And that's not the important thing. The important thing is your most valuable asset. If you're going to join, whether it's NOBBL or any of the other divisions or chapters or affiliates, whatever it may be in your NFB journey, the most important part is participating, because the most valuable asset you have isn't that $1 or that $10, whatever you're paying to your affiliate or your chapter. It's your time. You have no greater asset that you can give. And it's so important that if you're going to join, don't sit around waiting for something to happen. Make something happen.
Yeah, I agree. Your time and your gifts, they're gifts and talents that we all can bring.
Absolutely.
So we had a little joke, David and I, about every time that Paul Howard said Gary, Indiana, I thought of the Jackson 5 and that song, I'm Going Back to Indiana. And he didn't know what I was talking about. So if anyone out there also thought of the Jackson 5 every time you heard Gary, Indiana, I would love to have some sort of validation, if you will. But even otherwise, our email address is whitecanesconnect@gmail.com.
And you could give us a call. In fact, if you know that song and would like to sing a few bits of it, give us a call, 267-338-4495. Just keep in mind, we can't use the singing part on an episode because of copyright limitations. But again, 267-338-4495. If you do call and sing, please leave your name and town where you're calling from and tell us that you remember the song and that, yes, Lisa is 100% correct and she's not crazy.
That was a great conversation. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Kris. Looking forward to more good things from NOBBL.
Yes, looking forward to that. In affiliate news, the parents of blind children are currently doing a fundraiser, and we've been talking about this for a couple of weeks. They're doing a candy fundraiser. I'll have a link in the show notes. Click over there, and that would really help that organization out. And it is going until early April, so you still have a few weeks to get in on that. Again, link will be in the show notes. Lisa, it was a great show today.
Yes. Thank you, David. Thank you, Paul and Kris.
And thanks, everyone, for listening. Take care.
Bye now.